Welcome, everybody. Episode 2 of Road Dawgin. I'm your host, Jordan Marshall, the Road Dog. I have an awesome guest lined up for you guys. I'm super excited about it. He's a really good friend of mine. We've traveled and fished together some, and somebody even mistook him for my dad. They thought he was my dad one time. We walked in a restaurant. So, without further ado, we're going to bring in Jim Ware.
Hey,
What's
man.
up, Jim?
Not much. That was crazy.
Do you remember where we were when that happened?
No, I don't. Well, I think you told the waitress that, yeah, he is.
Yeah, that sounds about right. If I'm not mistaken, we were in Scottsboro, Alabama, but I don't remember where we were at.
I can't either. It may have been Jefferson's. Maybe another time we were in Jefferson's. So
That is one of my all-time favorite places.
right.
Hashtag non-sponsored Jefferson's in Scottsboro, Alabama.
Good wings.
Jim, introduce yourself to everybody that doesn't know you, that might be listening, and tell them all about yourself and how you got into
Okay.
kayak fishing.
I'm my name's Jim Ware. Live up here in Rome, Georgia, and I'm 54. Work at a paper mill and shift work and fish as much as I can. I got into kayak fishing. Lord, it was like '08 when I first fished out of a kayak, and I'd been renting kayaks when we go to the beach. Um, rent one, fish in the bay. Me and my daughter, she was little, and I'd fish on one side and let her snorkel on the back side. And the when I realized I needed to own one, I got up at daylight, standing on the deck of the house we'd rented, and I was going to go down and fish in the surf. And I'm looking out, and it's probably 300 yards off the beach, and there's this giant school of bait out there, and I mean, it's birds, fish, everything's eating it, and way out of reach of me. And while I'm looking, off the deck out there, kind of out of uh, from this, what I'm looking at, here comes 3 kayaks paddling into the scene, and they go out there and they stayed there for several hours. While I fish on the beach, I'm watching them. I said, I'm going to catch these guys when they get back over here. And it was a man and his 2 sons. And when they got back, they were talking about all the, Spanish mackerel and bluefish and, just how much fun they'd had out there fishing. And when I got back up to the house, I told my wife I was going to buy a kayak, and that was in like '08. So I found one in Savannah, Georgia. A kid had, I don't even know who, Kingfisher was the name of the kayak. It was a 12-foot sit on top. And it had a seat, the old timey seats that had like gel seat. He had won it in a tournament. And I believe the seat was probably more expensive than a boat. And I kept that thing for about 2 years. And well, I loved it. But as I went along, I realized I needed what I needed more in a boat. Went from there to got a ride 135, had it for about 3 years, and it got stolen. And I had no idea about this kayak fishing community at the time. Like I said, I work a shift work. I thought I was the only cat around doing it.
Yeah.
And I had no idea about tournaments or anything like that. And it was pretty still underground back then. And so I go to a local Jackson kayak dealer over in Cartersville, Georgia, and he doesn't sell kayaks anymore. It's Cahutta Fishing Company. And I walk in, I'm going to look for a Cuda because everybody told me a Cuda 14 was closest, similar to that.
Yeah, fast and narrow. They were kind of a narrower fishing kayak. Yeah.
Well, I walk in, and there's this is 2014, I think, and there's this. It was urban camo, big rig, just come out, standing up in the corner like a beacon.
Was that the brown and blue and white camo?
It was gray, blue, and white. It was
I got
kind
you.
of, and I mean, it was here. This boat is in the corner, and it had a bit and branches Angler Pro on it that was the wood color. It was like brown and tan. Had it strapped to it. I said, I gotta have it. They put it in the floor. I checked it out. I was like, put a down payment on it. Come back and bought it. And so the very first tournament I fished was a local tournament that Cohutta Fishing Company put on along with our Riverkeeper group, Coosa River Basin CRBI, Coosa River Basin Initiative.
Yeah.
And it was my daughter's prom day night. So I fished a tournament and I won it. And it was a weird. I ain't going into the rules of it, but it was anything that's a bass, white bass, striped bass, whatever. And you had your identifier was cards with 1 through 5 on it. Well, when you could, if you caught a small fish, your first fish, and you thought I'm gonna catch more, you better not take a picture of it with 1 in it, because once you took that picture, that's it. And so anyway,
So
I
it was
can't.
your best 5, no culling.
No culling. That's it. You could throw them back, but you better not. You couldn't take a picture of them. So it was you had a strategy. It was fun. It was a fun tournament, and
Yeah.
I won it. And see, when I bought the big rig, I tried to get him to throw that Angler Pro in, and he's like, "Nah." And so he threw in like the basic paddle in the deal. Well, grand prize was an Angler Pro bending branches, so I got the paddle that I wanted.
That's all.
So that was pretty cool. And I'm running late for my daughter's prom pictures. Big deal for that. And I pull up and there's my wife standing up there, and I could we're at City Clock Hill, as a big historical thing here in Rome,
Yeah.
and people get pictures made there. I'm running up there. And I can tell my wife she's fit to be tied, man. And my daughter just yells at me. She says, "Did you win?" And I said, "I did." And so that was it. And um, but that first year kayak fishing with that boat, that thing was so comfortable. As
Yeah.
compared to anything I'd ever been in. I hauled it around in the back of the truck all the time, and I fished so much. And a buddy of mine, I'd tell him, like in the Coosa River here, I caught a walleye out of there, which is rare. I caught,
Yeah.
like, this one week. He's like, "Dude, how many different species of fish have you caught like this week?" And it was like 10 out of, just different species. So he said, "You ought to keep up with that." So I did. And so I got that kayak in February. And about January of the next year, I was sitting at like 26 different species out of the
Oh my
state of
gosh.
Florida. Yeah. And a lot of them wasn't like, there's a ton of different sunfishes.
Yeah.
I had a shell cracker and a bluegill. I wasn't counting. But I had 6. Hold on. I had 4 black bass species. And at the time, now I think they recognize 10. But
Yeah.
I was missing a spotted bass. I mean, excuse me, a smallmouth, which is hard to catch in the state of Georgia.
Oh yeah.
And nowadays, and a Sewanee. So I go up to Lake Blue Ridge. I've been up there 6 times trying to catch a smallmouth, to finish this little quest I'm on.
Yeah.
And the 6th time, it's spitting snow that morning. I'm probably the only person on the entire lake, and I've got an Eagle depth finder, little black and white deal.
Yeah.
And I look down, and it looks like noodles, just stripes going. I was like, "What the hell is that?" And I drop a Flex-It jig, little vertical slab jig down there. I catch 2 big spots to start with. I thought, "Oh God, I see what that is. That's fish shooting through the beam."
Yeah.
Then I toss it out there again. I catch a 19.5-inch smallmouth. And I call my buddy who I used to run with and camp with, and I just on the water. I said, pack your bags, buddy. I said, we're going after Sewanee bass. I got my smallmouth. So I ended up topping it off with a Sewanee, not in the state of Georgia. The rivers down there were flooded. I had to go over the line into Florida to the, what's, it's a tributary of the Sewanee River. But went
What
over
if it was the
there.
same one that I wound up in? I'm gonna try to pull it up on my map while you're talking.
It's Santa Fe River. That's the one.
Yes, that was actually the exact same place that I went to.
It's like a dang jungle. I mean, it was like it was awesome. And I probably wasn't fishing 10 minutes and caught my first one. And it was a Florida. It was like 14 and a quarter inches. So
Oh, that's a good one.
submitted it and got the whole certificate and all that. So anyway, that year I finished up 30 fish, different freshwater species out of that big rig. I started, I had started writing a blog also. And so the blog and, me being in Jackson Kayak kind of eventually led to me touching base with the Jackson Kayak fishing team. I applied there and got accepted. And, it was, I was with Jackson for six years, I believe. And Jamie Koza decided to sell kayaks and started a team. And I'm local and got on with Jamie, and that's the best, And he sells Jackson kayaks now. I'm in a Blue Sky,
Yeah.
but it's like a big family down there. It's a
Oh, yeah.
wonderful being a part of that group.
I can 100% attest to that. The first time I went down there for a meet and greet, and I think it was like the second time I'd ever met Jamie, and the first time was just like at a fishing show. We've had a few conversations with Steve, and the first time I'd ever really sat and talked to Jamie, he found out it was actually the day before that me and you went fishing last December.
Gotcha.
We were gonna meet and go fish offshore, and I was gonna stay in Marietta that night and just sleep in my truck or drive to where we were gonna fish the next day up in North Georgia, and was just gonna sleep in my truck. And Jamie found out that I was gonna sleep in my truck and got so mad at me. He was like, "Don't you ever come within a half hour of Marietta and not stay at my house or not ask me if I'm home or something." He's like, "You're staying at my house." He said,
Yeah.
So we'll rig something up. He said, "Don't offend me like that." And I was like, "All right, that's." Jamie made me feel right at home for the first time I spent any time with him. So
Right.
Dugout's been incredible to me, and I know it's been incredible to all of our family of guys throughout the southeast, and as we're expanding, we got guys all over the place now.
Right, right. And the first time I met you, and I was going to ask you how old you were, but I forget what year it was. Me and John Hummel started a club called Peach State Kayak Anglers, and I was kind of itching to get it. We hadn't had a trail, didn't have a trail planned, but I wanted to have a tournament. So
Yeah,
he had in November, King of the Rock at Rocky Mountain Project, which is here in Rome. It's or in Florida, in my county, and great lake to fish. Three lakes. And I'm taking the money up old school, where you show up and pay cash at the table and get your identifier then and all that.
I want to say this was probably 2017, give or take.
Okay. And I said, "What's your name?" Jordan Marshall. Where are you from? Sevierville, Tennessee. And I'm like, "You drove all the way down here for this?" And you were already in the area, but
Yeah,
that
I was
was
actually fishing Gunnersville. I wanted to come down and fish Gunnersville, and that was back 2016, 2017, and it was probably November 2017. I'll stick with that one. And that was back when a lot of tournaments were printing off their own identifiers. You didn't, there wasn't like captains meetings. You had to print an ID off, and I had forgotten to print an ID off before I left Maryville. And I drove down there, didn't have an ID. Was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do at this point. So I was like, I'm not catching any fish on Friday afternoon anyway. And I just kind of spur of the moment drove to King of the Rock. I found it on Facebook, saw there was an event. Um, I saw y'all were talking about there could be really big fish caught, and I was like, King of the Rock sounds cool, and I drove across the mountain and almost ran out of gas. And there's nothing between northeastern Alabama and northwestern Georgia across the state line. There's just nothing there.
Right.
And drove all night, slept in a hammock between a couple trees in the whatever county park or state park or whatever uh, that Rocky Mountain is on, and met all you guys and had just a fantastic time. And that's kind of been between Peach State and what was it for a while? Real Crazy was the other
Yeah.
group that was down there. That
Uh-huh.
was kind of my two Georgia clubs that I fished for a while, and uh, and just met so many incredible people in Georgia through that. And
Yeah, that was our first. You had big fish that tournament too, didn't you? I
yeah,
believe.
I did. I caught like a 22 and change or something, and actually had the second biggest fish that day. But the guy that caught the big fish didn't put in on big bass, and I got big bass, and we caught them like in the same pocket as each other.
Yeah.
And I ended up finishing fifth and had big bass with one fish because it was
Yeah.
tough that day. Tough, tough,
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah. That's one of those places that I've told people you feel one day you feel like Roland Martin, next day you feel like you don't know how to fish.
Oh
It'll
yeah.
let you down big time. But so yeah, that was um uh, how old were you then?
2017, I was, November of 2017, I was 22.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I didn't, I looked like I was probably 18 because I didn't
Yeah.
have a bunch of
Yeah.
hair and I was, clean shaven, and I probably weighed, I probably weighed 50, 60 pounds less than I do now. So, I
Yeah.
still looked like a little goofy kid, and nobody knew who I was either. So it was just, one of those
No,
things.
I remember coming home from that. I was like, my wife, I said, Amber, I said, there was a kid there. I said, Sevierville, Maryville. I said, he
Yeah.
come almost from Knoxville down to fish our tournament, and she's like, hey, it's great. And I was like, well, that's, and ever since then, we've, kept in touch and cherished that friendship and
Oh,
always
yeah.
have a good time
Do
together.
do you remember what the first place prize was for that event, the little trophy thing? Do you remember what that was?
There was a um, Orion cooler. Um, there was a peach beanie. Do you remember that?
In the shape of like a crown or something,
Crown.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
It
like
was
a yarn
yeah,
crown or some
crocheted.
sort that was peach colored.
Yeah, it was a crocheted beanie that a friend of my wife's did for us, and it come out like a crown. And I can't remember the rest of it, but the crown was classic, man.
Oh yeah,
And I
100%.
was
That was what I was fishing for there was seeing if you remembered the crown, because
yeah,
I remember showing up and was like, I was like, man, these guys in Georgia have a tournament called King of the Rock, and they're giving away a crown. I don't care what it looks like. They're giving away a crown. That's
I
awesome. And I was like, I want to go
always
win that crown.
always wanted wish some, and I'm sure there's some clubs that do it, but a freaking title belt. I
Yeah.
mean a bona fide, like Dusty Rhodes toted.
Oh yeah.
A belt like that. That would be awesome.
We might have to get something together and do that, because I know some club has done that. I've seen pictures of it, on social
Mhm.
media, but I cannot think of, and it might not even been recently, honestly.
Right.
But trophies like that, trophies that are different. I've got a I'm one of this next podcast. I need to bring up my Santa Cops trophy. Me and my buddy Eric won. It's a fish. It's a metal trophy, kind of cut out from like a plastic
Uh-huh.
cut or whatever, and it has a Santa hat on top of the fish.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's one of my favorite trophies just because it's different. It's, and there's nothing wrong with these trophies, but
Right.
There's a lot more of these trophies given out than a metal fish with a Santa hat on top of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's I like the cool stuff too.
I might have to do a like a submission on Facebook to try to find the coolest trophy and do like a giveaway or something for that. I think that'd be kind of cool. Find the
It
coolest
would
trophy
be.
in kayak fishing.
It would be. But yeah,
So
that's how I got into kayak fish. And the tournament deal. Back to my boat got stolen. Like I said, I had no idea there was this community out, and Facebook was still newer. I hadn't been on
yeah,
it that long, and I posted on there. If you see this boat, holler at me. It's been stolen, dude. I didn't know these people. People shared it, and people messaging me saying, I get discount on the what was a Hook One team. I can get discounts. If you need a new
yeah,
boat, holler at me. I mean, just it's outpouring of people wanting to help out, and I was like, oh my God, where did all these people come from? Then one day I'm out on Rocky fishing, and I see this dude in a kayak out there, and I'm wondering who in the hell is this? Because like I said, I think I'm Lone Ranger,
yeah.
and it's Jim Clark. And a storm rolls up on us, and we end up getting under a tree, a patch of trees on the same point. So we start talking, and we plan exchange numbers, and he's a cool dude, and we go fishing on the river. And while we're floating, he says, "Hey, are you going to fish the KBF Open on Kentucky Lake?" And I have no idea what KBF is. What is that? And he said, "Oh, it's this tournament they're having up on Kentucky Lake." I'm thinking that's a long way. What does it pay out? And he said, "Grand prize is $14,000." And that was the year before they started the national championship.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hell yeah, I'm going to fish it." And so I went and drove up and fished it, and fished about every one of them since then, and the other. I just got hooked on it then.
Yeah.
Seeing, I think there was like 100 at the time. It was the largest tournament ever,
Yeah.
140 people or something,
Yeah.
and got to know lots of people, and
I
now
believe I was also at that event, and that was the first event that they had Tourney X. They had us download
yep,
Tourney X at the captain's meeting on Thursday or Friday night, whatever it was, in
sure did.
that giant room back behind the Quality Inn in Paris,
Uh-huh.
Tennessee. I will never forget that. And that's you can for those that don't know, if you look on Tourney X, especially on your apps, and you see guys that are always at the top before the tournament start, people joke around and say, when I sign up for a tournament, I'm always, close to the top before a tournament starts. And Corey Dryer's that way, Jody Queen's that way. I'm sure Jim's that way. Those first, 100 to 200 people that were there for that event, 150, whatever it was, uh, Tourney X registers you and sorts you before a tournament starts by what your Tourney X ID number is. And your Tourney X ID number is in what order you signed up for the event or signed up for Tourney X in general. So when I just pull up Tourney X on my phone right now, I'm 216.
Nah,
And, there's guys that have like 17,000 or something like that now that's doing it. So it's
I'll have to
cool to
look.
see how that's progressed.
Yeah, I'll have to look at my number, because
So
yeah, that was the first time I'd met Dwayne, and he was he had to help a lot of people
he got
that
thrown to the wolves. He really did back
sure
then.
did. He sure did.
Yeah. So you talked about Peach State being your local club. What all national clubs have you fished over the years, and what are you trying focusing on now?
Okay, I fished. Let's see, Hobie, and a couple of years ago qualified for the Hobie BOS on Eufaula, through um, Lake Sam Rayburn that year. I haven't fished any Hobies this year, mainly because the boat I'm in a blue sky and I don't have a pedal drive on it. It's trolling motor, and I've been fishing with a motor. I got all my electronics, and I ain't got enough money to load up. I've got a Jackson Gnar, but I don't have enough to.
That motor will spoil you, won't it?
It will, and so I've been fishing Bassmaster, fished the native No Limits and I love that. I'm gonna be honest with you, that was a fun deal,
That
and I
was a lot
learned
of
a lot. There's a lot um, of strategy that I learned. After the fact, I've reviewed it in my head, and I'm like, there's quite a few things I need. Next one, I'm gonna pre-plan, and even so far as to my fish, I had 10 keepers, but I only uploaded 9 of them because they got jumbled up when I didn't have self service. So anyway, it wouldn't have made me win, but in the future, I'll have a different way of keeping up with my pictures if I don't have service. But yeah,
yeah.
that was a
Submitting
fun.
fish all at once at the end of the day was a mess. I didn't have any service
Yeah,
either, and that was
yeah,
a mess.
yeah. So yeah, I skipped one there, but and I've been to Sam Rayburn. That's about as far west as I've been. Uh, I
Is that the
fished
furthest you've ever
KBF.
been? Is that the furthest you've
No,
ever been to a
I think
tournament of Sam Rayburn?
Lake Erie. Fished KBF event on Lake Erie. Been several times down to Kissimmee, which that's not as far as that, but it's opposite spectrum
Yeah,
down there. But yeah, and been to Toledo Bend quite a few times. Been to Shreveport a few times. At Caddo. But yeah, Lake Erie was. I'd love to go back up there. That was a really Presque Isle Bay is where it was. Erie,
yeah.
Pennsylvania. Were you at that one?
I wasn't. I had never actually fished Erie until the weekend before our Lake Cayuga event this year for the
Yeah.
Hobie BOS series. Me and Eric went and drove around. We fished eastern basin of Erie for a couple days, went to Presque Isle Bay and tried to fish one day, and just kind of ran around Erie for I guess it was 2 days actually. We did one day eastern basin, one day Presque Isle Bay, and then kind of fished what was it, St. Lawrence and Lake Ontario
Right.
on back to back days before the Cayuga event. So we
Gotcha.
knocked out a bunch of bucket list fisheries all in a week or so.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I believe Erie, Pennsylvania is first I've traveled.
I got you. How many miles do you put on a year, do you think, fishing?
Man, I don't know. I hadn't kept up with. I know this. I've had the Tahoe that I'm driving right now. Um, when I bought it, my wife's uncle, on the it had 80, I think 108,000 miles is what it had on it. And I got it 2 years ago, and it's got about 210 on it now.
Oh my goodness. I think you're putting more miles on a vehicle than I am.
Well, also I go not just tournaments. Yeah, I just like in April, I took a week and just took a fishing trip solo and left here and hit Astor, Florida. Went from there to Kissimmee. Went from there to um, over to Orange Lake. Came up to the Panhandle. Took a whole Seminole,
Yeah.
Miccosukee, and then came home. And I got my wife is a friggin' angel because she lets me, she trusts me, and she knows all I'm doing is just you know feeding an addiction that I have fishing, and so she's cool with it. And when I get a chance to go, I'm gonna go. Um,
Yeah. Tell everybody about a little bit about you mentioned your Tahoe. Tell everybody about your Tahoe. You got a pretty cool rig set up that I've
okay.
been fortunate to see when we've been staying in places.
Yeah, it. Well, so I've got a single mattress in the back. I got all the seat. There's only one seat in it, driver's seat. Passenger seat's gone. I've got to keep my cooler over there, and a drone, a couple of batteries, um, just storage over there. Behind the seat, I've got those seats gone. The third row seats gone. So I have a mattress in the back. Got a couple of totes in there for tackle. I bought a room sized air conditioner, freestander, at Walmart, and you can hang meat in that sucker. Oh, yeah, I mean it's cold. And I've got a board cut, so I roll my passenger window down. I've got a board cut. It's got a hole big enough for the exhaust vent tube off of the air conditioner to go out. And I plug in at a campsite and use that air conditioner. The I've got some. I took some paracord and looped it in the front and the back, and used wire ties. And about every 4 inches, I tighten a wire tie on there. And I've got my rods in the rod sleeves, socks across there, and it'll hold 10. So yeah, when I'm laying there in the bed going to sleep, it's like a lair.
Yeah.
I sleep with a CPAP, so yeah, I've got that air conditioner going. I got my CPAP on. I'm sitting there curled up. It's freezing cold in the middle of August the other day, and I look up and I've got fishing rods up. It's awesome.
He is a bona fide road dog.
It's it. Like when you're a kid, you'd make a blanket tent, or use the arm of a couch, and you know there and feel like this is cool. No, I'm just a big kid. That going to sleep in my back of my Tahoe. That's it's. I know I'm having fun when I'm sleeping in that thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're off grid. You're fishing lakes that not even I have heard of before. He just told me about the lake you just mentioned it a couple minutes ago. Miccosukee.
Yeah.
Miccosukee.
Yeah.
I was like, that sounds like somewhere I'd want to fish. That's got a funky name. That sounds like that's got that sleeping in your vehicle written all over it.
It does. Yeah, it's out in the middle of nowhere. So the Panhandle of Florida, actually central, northern Florida, they have prairie lakes. They're natural lakes. Lake Jackson's one of them, and most of them they're connected to the Florida aquifer through the ground, and they'll have sinkholes, and they'll just disappear overnight, basically. So Lake Jackson did that not too long ago, and then they'll come back and rebound, and I don't know how long it takes, a few years, and then it'll be like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic down there. I can't wrap my brain around those Florida little flatland lakes.
Yeah. Well, this lake is matter of fact, Miccosukee had a sinkhole, and they built a dam around the sinkhole, so that won't happen to it. So there's a separated section over there that could go empty. But those lakes are shallow and large and covered in lily pads, and you get out there and everything looks fishy.
Yeah.
You'll see, there might be a little stand of a cypress here and there, poking up, or they've got these floating islands, mud islands, and it looks like solid ground, but they move around with the wind. They'll.
Is that where there's just so much grass that grows, and it kind of gets where almost like punching grass, where it'll detach, and then it just kind of like dies on top, and almost kind of looks like ground that way? Is that kind of what happens there?
Yeah, and I mean they'll have bushes growing out of the top of them and stuff, but yeah, I love, and Florida's got my number. I can't. I'm starting to figure it out a little bit. The last few times I've been, I've actually caught some big fish, but every year I went to the KBF will have that Invitational. That's always fun. Get to see Jody Queen, Corey Dreyer, and all those guys, camp with them. And but it has my number every year. But
did you see where they're having the Invitational this year?
Gunnersville.
Gunnersville. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've already qualified for the 10 from that event that I fished earlier this year on Gunnersville, but the Temptations on Gunnersville, that's right up your alley.
I will if I can get off work. It's in October too.
Yeah,
I'm
Gunnersville
planning
can be a
on
lot of
fishing.
fun in
Yeah, I'm
October.
planning on fishing it, but looking forward to this Tennessee uh, Bass Nation Championship coming up too. That's going to be fun. I fish, even though being from Georgia and not a knock against Peach State or any of those guys, but generally like TVKA, they'll have theirs their tournaments, Chickamauga, Watts Bar. All those are generally closer drive than anything that the Georgia clubs have.
Yeah,
I tend to fish a good bit of their stuff, and there's some daggum hammers in that club, and also Tennessee Bass Nation. I fished a good many of their tournaments this year too
yeah, yeah.
when
They
I
had a
could.
fantastic schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how much of the Georgia Bass are you going to fish? Seminole, their state championship. It's the week
No,
after TOC.
no, I
I
won't
was
be. I didn't. I didn't fish any Georgia Bass Nation this year.
Oh,
I either
really?
had, yeah, I had to work, or I think I may have been on a couple of trips when they had tournaments.
I got you.
Uh,
I thought I might have been looking for a roommate down there. I'm still
oh
got
yeah,
to figure out what I'm going to do. I somehow managed to qualify for Tennessee and Georgia state championships. I'm going to try to double down and make some magic happen at one or the other. Right?
right. Yeah, I'm hoping. Georgia's you're got already got a Tennessee guy's Georgia state champion. Tennessee needs a Georgia guy's state champion. So I'm gonna come in there guns a blazing, see what happens.
I don't blame you. That's wide open. I mean, Gunnersville fishes so well this time of year. We saw that with the native event this weekend. It took basically, every single hour of that event it took a 21-inch fish to win the hourly. And if I'm not mistaken, all 8 fish were caught on 8 different techniques, not just eight
Yeah,
different baits, but techniques. I mean, from throwing a shaky head deep to frogging to one guy
but
was a spook buzz bait. I caught my big one on a buzz bait, and Gunnersville's so diverse where you can do so much. Everybody that has some confidence that can kind of find what they want to do, and
yeah,
it's wide open, man. That Tennessee Bass Nation Championship at G. That's going to be a really special event. Should be some big numbers. I wouldn't doubt it if it takes 195 inches to win that tournament.
yeah. That's what I was. I know the last Tennessee Bass Nation last year fished one on Gunnersville, and I had 86 and a half inches. I knew I wouldn't win, but I thought I might be, nipping at a check there. And I had
Yeah.
a 22 and a quarter. I believe that was my kicker. I was like, yeah, I might have big fish. No, 22 and a half. It was a quarter inch bigger than mine was big fish, and freaking 86 inches put me at 13th place.
Yeah, that was what was that, May of last year, I believe?
Yeah.
I so, here's a fun road dogging story for everybody. I actually tried to I've tried to double dip in tournaments, right? Both tournaments on the same lake, 2 or 3 tournaments. That's pretty common for kayak events now. I tried to do something what looking back was actually kinda stupid, that day. So they had a Bass Nation event at Gunnersville. I stayed down there, woke up, fished 3 hours, had like 87, 88 inches, and I was in like 1st or 2nd place because service is a little spotty on Gunnersville, and I was like, "I got 87 or 88 inches," and my goal for the day was to cash a check in the Georgia or the, Bass Nation event at Gunnersville, and then I drove midway through the day to Chickamauga to fish a local event, which I needed to basically show up and catch 3 halfway decent fish to kinda get some points to try to make our state championship. And I drove up there, caught 3 15-inch fish, was, 2 or 3 spots out of the money, and was 2 or 3 spots out of the money in the Gunnersville event, and I had, a small limited chick, which it was tough for everybody. It was a miracle I got 3 fish, showing up late in the day, but when I left Gunnersville, I was in like second place or third
Right.
place in the first couple hours with 87 upper 80s, whatever I had, and then the standings went down. I had no idea, and by the end of the day, I was like, well, if I didn't do great on Chickamauga, at least I won some money at Gunnersville this morning. And then once the standings came back on, I realized I didn't win anything, and I was like, man, this was so close to being like the coolest day I've had on the water, and it was just a bust, honestly. So I didn't get any bragging rights for that event. Just a bunch of driving around.
Yep. Yeah, I got back yeah, when I call, I forget what they paid out, but I saw it. I said 13. Jesus Christ! 86 should get you at least top 10. I'm like, I ain't even in top 10 with 86 inch, but it is Gunnersville, and that they was loaded with some really good. We got some great guys. Great anglers around here.
And
That
there's a
only
lot of
we got some good ones that don't fish like the big national tournaments. Just
yeah.
the Bass Nation types. Uh, Sticking around probably because of work or life or whatever, and they put it up.
And there's a lot of really good guys that basically just fish Gunnerful or, just
Yeah,
the southern swing of the Tennessee River. They'll fish Gunnersville, Wheeler, and what is the other one? Wilson.
yeah,
And guys like Randall Wallace that you don't really see travel a whole lot. That every time you see Randall sign up for an event on Gunnersville, you go, okay, there's one of the top fives,
yep,
because Randall's going to catch him because he knows Gunnersville really well, and there's a bunch of guys that know that very well, like Joe Drowns. I don't think that he's traveled a whole lot out of there, but he's pretty consistent on Gunnersville. Finished second that KBF event that I won. I'm gonna guys out, so I'm gonna quit naming them so somebody don't get offended that I forgot them out on my Gunnersville
right.
checklist. But Jim, tell us some of the places that some of your bucket list kind of places, your favorite place to go to, or somewhere that you haven't been that you would like to go to. I know you mentioned was it Toledo Bend that you like and have done well at. Tell us more about some of your favorite places.
Okay, Dale Hollow in December. I love it, and I can't wait for this the Tennessee Bass Nation they're having up there. Something about that place in the cold weather. I love going up there, and I don't know the lake very well, but I know about three spots. And in December, there could be a lot of fish, big fish on it. So
Yeah.
I've hit it a few times, and had like stellar days on it. So yeah, Del Hollow catching those smallmouths is one of my favorites. And the lake's just beautiful. If you didn't know it had a dam, you'd think it was some natural lake out west with all the bluffs, and
It is a
it's a
very
really
beautiful
cool
lake.
place. And another lake I'm super fond of is here in Georgia, northeast Georgia's Lake Burton. It's a small lake around. I think it's less than 2,000 acres. It's home to Georgia's state record Alabama spot, and I usually take a few trips up there every winter to and spring to try to catch a giant.
I'm determined to meet you down there at one point this
Yeah,
year. We talk about that every year. We end up kind of meeting at some point over the winter, somewhere. Hopefully we can do that a couple times this year. I'd like to get back to where we fished this winter and maybe go to Burton and try Burton because I still haven't
right.
been.
So and then Sam Rayburn was. I mean that's one of those lakes. Growing up and watching Bassmaster on TV, just legendary for bass fishing. And when we went out there, that lake was like 11 foot over summer pool, and and nobody knew what to expect when we got out there. I was expecting it to be muddy, no, it was not. It was clear, they just been holding that water there.
Yeah,
So another trip out there, I know it would be, you know, absolutely different. But I'm gonna tell you a funny, quick story. So probably like you, leading up to where I leave to go on a tournament, I'm glued to a map, looking, reading some articles. So it wasn't any secret that this one creek arm that I chose to fish in had won a lot of money in the past years in bass boat tournaments, that area. So I'm scouting that area on the maps, and I look, and there's this creek that feeds into it. And the name of it is Ware Branch. And I told my wife, look at that, look at the name of that creek. And she said, oh yeah. And I said, there'd be some shit old boy from Georgia come out there and win a tournament on Ware Branch, just joking. Well, I get out there and I practice during the week, and I saved that spot till the very end. I caught some good fish in practice, but I said, I'm going to go out there and check this Ware Branch. So I get out there, and there's a huge school of fish at the mouth of Ware Branch, which now it's completely, underwater. And there's lily pads 10 foot underwater. It's weird. It was a cool looking scene on the depth finder.
I bet.
And I said, no way, that's bass. I flip a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait out there and just slow roll it through it, catch about three, 15, 16-inch fish. And I said, I'm not leaving till I see a big one. And I pulled a worm through there and got one. It got off at the boat, but it was a 20 plus inch fish. And that's where I sat at for the next 2 days and come in second place. Didn't win it. I was leading after day one, but every fish I caught was at Ware Branch. And I thought that was a cool deal, finding it on the map.
Absolutely. That's
that was,
I don't think I've ever fished Marshall Creek or Marshall Branch or anything like that. I'm gonna have to keep a better lookout for places
yeah.
named after me when I'm out scouting around.
But the bucket list spots, areas, I want to fish. What's the lake up there in Detroit?
St. Clair?
So I want to fish it so bad. I really, really want to fish it. I hope Bassmaster goes there next year.
I just hope if they do, I hope they don't go the weekend of Jobby Nooner. I went up there for a Hobie event one time, and it was the weekend of Jobby Nooner. For those that don't know, for those that do know, they're already laughing because they can picture me in a kayak on St. Clair and Jobby Nooner. But Jobby Nooner is like an extra Labor Day for auto workers, and that's like one of the world's largest boating holidays, like in the whole world. And for all my local guys that know what Boomsday is, if you stacked like 3 Boomsdays on top of each other, and instead of having that on Loudon and Tellico, you had it on a lake the size of this county, but everybody's kind of running in and out of one channel. It was crazy. So you got the wind and just a giant lake with waves, and then you have all these crazy yachts and stuff just running around like they have no idea what they're doing. And it was probably one of the most scared I've ever been on the water. So I would definitely give St. Clair a try again. I caught some fish in practice. I'm more prepared this time. I'd actually bring my passport and try to fish the Canadian side, because I didn't do that last time, and I felt like I got a little bit shortchanged on my St. Clair experience. But I think you're spot on right there. I would love to see an event go back up to St. Clair and hit that properly.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, St. Clair. Lord, man, I want to go. I want to go to OH Ivy. That's I just the hype and all that. I'd like to go out there, or one of those other. I've heard. I don't even know the names, but some of those Texas guys says there's 2 or 3 other lakes that's just as hot. I'd like to take a trip out there to Texas and fish for those giant bass. South Florida for peacock bass. I haven't been able to do that yet.
We need to do a peacock bass trip. I've heard a lot about that. I've never really seen a lot of guys catching them in kayaks. Apparently, they're fairly easy to catch just fishing off the banks and those canals down there. But
Mhm.
We need to get us a group to go peacock bass fishing.
Right. But, like St. Lawrence, those legendary smallmouth lakes up there. There's, some other ones. But be honest with you, man,
Oh yeah.
I live an hour and 15, from Chickamauga, from Gunnersville. I can drive, within a couple hours, I'm at Wilson Dam, or go over at Pickwick, Smith Lake. It's
We're blessed to have some
yeah,
crazy fisheries around here, and
they are
I
so
don't think
blessed.
moving water smallmouth, moving
Yeah.
water spotted bass, incredible largemouth fisheries, well managed largemouth fisheries, grass fisheries. Anywhere on the Tennessee River system, you can fish current for smallmouth and largemouth. We're incredibly blessed, and I think that's why you have so many incredible anglers that come from North Alabama, North Georgia, and
Right.
Tennessee, both west and east, because of the Tennessee River system.
I think this year I'm going to make a trip over to Lake Jockasee. I've heard big good stories about that lake over in South Carolina. I haven't been yet, so probably
I've
take.
not been there either. You'll have to let me know about that one.
I will. I will.
So
But
tell everybody what your kind of preferred way to fish is. You kind of mentioned, a lot of these places are kind of offshore fisheries is what they're known for, and I think that's kind of your go to there, right?
right, if I'm going planning for a tournament, when I'm looking at maps, I'm not necessarily deep water, which I like fishing deep water. I'm definitely looking for offshore stuff, and when I get there to practice, I'm going to go look for offshore stuff. Whether it be channel bend, it may only be 8 foot of water, but I'm going to look for something offshore. Um, I can I can come in and fish the banks, or cypress trees are tough for me. I mean, I guess you just got to flip every single one up because it all looks freaking fishy.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I'm looking for when I go, I'm looking for offshore, like something definite. Like that is a definite fish holding area, a channel bend, a hump, a old road bed system, or something like that. Just to really narrow it down. And to be honest with you, once you get out there, a lot of times you got it to yourself. If you go to Gunnersville or something, there's no secrets out there, but it's there is some places on Gunnersville, uh, that I guess it's just too far of a run for those boats or whatever. But
Yeah.
you do your homework. There's some spots there too that you get on them, and there's a lot of fish and you catch them. But yeah, I just like fishing offshore. I love fishing, ledges and shell beds and humps, and I love dragging a jig, and a wobblehead jig to be precise.
That wobblehead jig. I'd like to know how many times Jim's talked about that wobblehead jig when we've been
Yeah.
practicing for a tournament, or he's fun fishing and we're just talking and whatever. He throws that wobblehead a lot. If there's one thing I had to bet on him throwing more than anything, it'd be that wobblehead jig.
That's it. Oh, well, yeah, I throw the crap out of it. And I was at Gunnersville yesterday, and first fish I caught a 20 off of a little flat side crankbait. I was like, hey, I hadn't caught one off of a something other than a wobblehead in a long time, and so it was neat. And um, meanwhile, I kept thinking, I need to put this wobblehead down and start. They wasn't hitting it, and so I picked up a swimming worm and went and hit some grass and caught some fish. I like grass has been a nemesis for me, and um, always trying to improve. So, but yeah, like a speed worm in the grass, I like doing that. That's about the easiest way I've found to catch fish out of the grass. Um,
Grass was interesting to me when I first started kind of traveling and fishing a lot more. Obviously growing up fishing Loudon and Tellico and Douglas, kind of you growing up fishing in a bass boat. Um, we took some trips to Gunnersville, and my dad that taught me how to fish. My dad likes flipping. He likes going to bluff walls and flipping a big black and blue jig. So we would go to Gunnersville and throw a frog for an hour or so, and then go hit a bunch of bluff walls and just go flip docks. And so, I didn't really fish grass a whole lot. And then when I started trying to learn chick more, when I was getting into kayak fishing TVKA, like the first 3 events I fished at chick, I zeroed all 3
yeah,
times and didn't have a good first year there at all. And as time went on, I kind of made it a focus of trying to learn that place. And I would spend, 2 weeks, 2 weekends a month down there, basically every other week, and just go down there and look around, cover water, and just see, kind of compare what everything looked like and where guys were, and that it worked out in the long run, even though it was miserable for a while, because I got to the point where I fished chick so much I hated it. But now, it is I won a state championship last year, and I've had pretty good finishes there when we've had national events, and I feel like all that time spent was worth it. And that's what you got to really think about when you're trying to learn different places is what can I learn to use later on.
right. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do what I like to do when I go, and a lot of the times it don't work. So I'm trying to not be as hard headed, and it's like, Jim, just pick up the frog, or you know throw the chatterbait. Everybody's catching on chatter, So I'm not quite as hard headed as I used to be. I'd sit out there and just pound my head and just keep doing the same thing over and over and over. Try not to do that anymore.
It's
I'm
easy to
working
do.
on it. I'm a work in progress.
Well, I got a couple more questions for you. This is kind of my 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 main question of Road Dog, and I'm going to try to ask everybody this. I'm going to try to phrase it better than I did with Eric last week. Kind of a 1A and 1B, and it's I want to give whoever's on here a chance to shout out guys you've traveled with and stayed with. Guys that are good guys that don't get a whole lot of spotlight, and guys you've traveled with and that kind of thing.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you, probably the one Jim Clark. Me and him, and he doesn't kayak fish anymore. Me and him has been a lot of places, man. And that cat, he is a dang nut. And we've always had a good time. We went to Erie. We've been to Toledo Bend. Clint Henderson, I've been on the road with him a good bit. We've been to Arkansas and out Toledo Bend together, and we'd camp and all that. I've stayed with you quite a few, several times over at Gunnersville, and always hook up when we're somewhere else. We've never traveled together, but um, but I do a lot of stuff solo. And
Solo
it's
road dogging.
that's it. I'm happy doing it with somebody else, and I've got buddies, and I would, if I'm heading somewhere and they wanted to go, I'd be more than happy to do it. But I'm just as happy by myself, trying to, you know, I, find a place to sleep and find the most unique or best restaurants in the area. Um, Something I've never had. Try to
What
just immerse myself in the culture of whatever that area I'm in is.
what is the most memorable restaurant that you think you've been to? It maybe not has to be the best food, but what's the most memorable one? Because I've got one that sticks out that I remember you posting about, but I'm curious what you're gonna say.
Okay. Bully's Soul Food, Jackson, Mississippi, was the most, and I've been twice, memorable experience I've had, and some of the best food I've ever had. And this place is a hole in the wall, little brick building, way off the beaten. I mean, it's old downtown. It's in like a old industrial area, Jackson, Mississippi. And both times I had oxtail, baked mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, black eyed peas. The first time I went in, I was coming back from Sam Rayburn, and I just Googled, the place, and 4 stars. I forget how many. It was like that's going to be good. I go in, and the lady asked me. She said, "Baby, how do you get so tanned?" And I had long sleeves on, and I pulled them up. I said, "They don't go far, it just goes." I said, "I fish, I'm out in the sun fishing." I showed her some pictures of fish that I'd caught, told her how the tournament had went, and she was just as sweet as she could be. And when I finished eating, walked over to the kitchen door and waved at her, and she came and give me a hug. She said, "You be sure and come back in here." I said, "Yes, ma'am."
That's a
So
good spot right there.
yeah, in May, that was in June. And then in October they had a tournament in Shreveport. And on my way home, I stopped back in there. And when I walked in, she said, she remembered me. So that
That's
was
even
probably
better, man.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, that was probably the most memorable dinner place I've ever eaten at. And it had its own. It's definitely not like a fancy place at all. Eat out of a styrofoam container, and
Yeah.
but dude, it was just like it's real life.
Yeah.
It was real.
You had posted something from Florida this year that I remember looking at and was like, "What in the world?" It was a white like A-frame sign, I think, that was
Yes,
on the road. There
yeah,
was a
exactly.
crazy item on that menu. Do you remember what it was?
I do. I actually have my GPS punched in for a barbecue joint, and I'm like 2 miles away from my target, and I'm at a red light, and I smell barbecue, smoke. I was like, "Where the hell? I know that's not the restaurant." I look, and there's this A-frame sign on the corner and a trailer barbecue shack, and it said chicken, ribs, and goat.
That's what it was. Yes,
And I
sir.
and I said, "Shit, that's where I'm going." And I whipped in there, which they were so. He told me, he said, "Man, if you want the goat, you got to be here by 11 a.m. We sell out quick." So I got the ribs, and I stood in the parking lot and ate those ribs, uh, and oh, they were so good. That's probably a top 5 places I've
I'll
ever.
have to go check that out. I've
Yeah,
had I've had bad luck with on the road barbecue. The last
yeah.
place I tried to stop and just randomly found a barbecue joint was me and Ewing were headed home from Florida.
Hmm.
Um, I guess that was over Christmas break. We were coming back and I stopped at a Pilot on the side of the interstate. Pilot or Loves, and there was a RV with a sign out in front of it that says homemade barbecue.
Yeah,
And I walked over there, and Ewing's like, "There's no way you're gonna get something to eat from there." And I was like, "Man, I am. That's the kind of places that's good. Places that don't look like you should stop at.
right.
And I made an order, and I kind of was like, "What in the world is going on here?" I don't know if the woman behind the counter was she was out of her mind. I bet she asked me 10 times whether I was what side I was on, and I kept telling her, I was like, "It's collard greens or whatever you have." And she come back, she goes, "We ain't got no collard greens." I was like, All right." And I had probably waited 20 minutes, and finally I just gave up. I was like, I walked back over across the parking lot, and I was like,
Yeah.
I've had some bad luck with barbecue joints out of town, but I've
Well,
had some really good barbecue. We had some good barbecue Saturday at Gunnersville at KC's barbecue.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That place was in Ocala, Florida, and the the parking lot. I mean, there was people standing in line at that trailer. Once I turned and pulled into the gravel parking lot, I thought, "Oh yeah, this is going to be good." Yeah, they're out here lined up, and when I got up there, he's like, I got a slab and a half of ribs left, and so I got a whole slab. There was another place somewhere in Southwest Louisiana, not deep south, but north of Baton Rouge. Me and Jim Clark were heading to Toledo Bend, and we were hungry. And I Googled, and it was Billy's Deli was the name of it. It was Billy's Meat Market was next to it. And gravel parking lot, we pull in there and got po' boys. And then next door in the meat market, you asked her for boudin balls, and she said you had to go next door. So I went over there and got, and the boudin balls the size of a tennis ball, giant. And we stood in that at night in that gravel parking lot, ate our po' boys and boudin balls with a bunch of like transient construction workers. They're out there, drinking beer and eating their po' boys, and that was some awesome food. And there was at Toledo Bend. There was a guy, I can't remember his name. He's from down South Louisiana, and he saw me coming across the parking lot. And he yelled, "Hey, Ware, how you know about Billy's?" And I was like, I just Googled it, and he said, "Man, they got the best food, some of the best boudin in Louisiana. You got lucky when you found that one." So, you know, every now and then, you get lucky.
I got you. We'll transition off the food and ask the last question. Is there anybody that we travel and fish with or fish against that we've ran into that you'd be like, man, I like to share a roof with that guy. I like to share a meal with that guy that I may haven't so far. Is there anybody that comes to mind?
I was about to say Matt Ball, but I actually have stayed with him. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Really cool. I mean, really good guy, and we always have great conversation.
Matt's a good one. He for those that don't know Matt, he kind of helps out with the kayak fishing with Christ. He actually leads some of the Friday night kind of Bible study that goes, kind of either before a captain's meeting or after a captain's meeting. Matt Ball's a great dude. Go ahead, Jim.
Right. Lance McCorder was another one. I've never stayed with him. Me and him, we see each other at tournaments and hit it off. And I like Lance. He's a unique guy. He got he's a chef, owns a kayak shop.
I would like to go to his restaurant. What is it in Austin? Is it in or Tyler?
Tyler, yeah.
Tyler, yeah. Tyler.
Yeah. Russell Johnson's another one. I stayed one time with him at Erie. He's a buddy of mine's on Jackson team. He's a restaurant owner. He's a unique individual. He's got some great stories. He was in the Navy. He's been around. Lance is the same way. He's been well traveled and got great stories.
I've been very fortunate to eat at Russell's shop up there. Yes, it is. Oh my goodness, I can't think. The steel plate in Monessen, Pennsylvania. And Russ, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I'm from the South. You got to give me a break. But the steel plate is incredible. Russell's cooking is fantastic. I went up to the kind of I was up in Northwest Pennsylvania and stopped through, kind of took a little hour detour to Pittsburgh. Monessen's just, I want to say, south of Pittsburgh, and stopped in there. And man, he treated us like family and had some of the absolute best food I've probably had out of state anywhere. I had high expectations. I was like, I don't know if this is going to be one of those things where it's just somebody knows somebody and they're hyping it up. And man, I think every time I get around Russ, and when we've both cut checks at Susky and that kind of thing, man, I think every time I've been on stage and he's in the room, I've shouted out his restaurant because it is just so good. He cooks all sorts of everything, and he doesn't just kind of delegate himself to one thing. I love seeing his specials on Facebook. It seems like all the time he's got something that's like, man, why can't he be closer? I want to try that.
Right. Me and my wife were talking a few weeks ago. We said, starting next year, we're going to try to make it elite. We're Braves fans. She is a huge Braves fan. She said, I'd like to go to one away game every year, to some of these classic parks, and I said, okay. And she said something about going to Pittsburgh. And I said, we go to Pittsburgh, go eat the steel plate. So he may see me next year, next baseball season.
Highly recommended.
Good. I know, like I said, the pictures on Facebook are you can almost taste it, and it looks so good. So,
Absolutely. Well,
um,
we're oh, go ahead.
that's yeah, man. The our overall community is just. I look at us as like traveling to these tournaments at regulars, and the new faces are always great to see. We're like a traveling band of gypsies. Everybody helps out. Anybody. It's just like a big family, and I love doing that. When uh, I love the check-ins and all that, and uh, seeing the familiar faces that you only see at tournaments, and um, anyway, we just we're blessed with a great group of people in our kayak fishing community, and there's a lot of people I can't think of that I would love to share a house with or hang out with, but yeah, we just we got a bunch.
One that's always we've talked about it a couple times, and the last time I kind of sat down with him, he even was like, "Man, we still ain't shared a roof together," and I was like, "You know what? You're right." Somebody that comes to mind is Adam Reiser for me.
Yes.
Just California dude, lives in Nashville now, just calm, cool as a cucumber. We run into each other on the water a couple times, couple
Hmm.
times a year, and just super cool dude. I'd like to get to know him a little better. That's somebody I'd like to share a meal or a house with for a weekend.
Right. I'm sure he's a unique. Uh, he would have some great stories. I'm
Oh
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That would be a fun. Uh, but it'd be fun to sit around and shoot shit with him for sure.
we might have to have him on the road dog and on the
Oh,
podcast.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jim, I think I'm gonna wrap us up here. I'm gonna give you a chance to thank all the people that sponsor you and help out. As you kind of
Okay.
travel around the southeast, and I'll let you kind of thank who you need to thank, and we'll roll on from there.
Okay. First, the dugout bait and tackle. That, like I said earlier, like a huge family down there. It's the most passionate shop I've ever seen. Jamie's a freaking wizard when it comes to rigging kayaks. I was down there the day, and there's a couple of new stuff he was showing me, and it is good stuff. He's always looking ahead. Seems like he's maybe a step ahead of everybody when it comes to his imagination when it comes to rigging a kayak.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, dugout bait and tackle and our team, just really, really good people down there. Jackson Kayak, I'm in Blue Sky Boat Works. A great group, great people. Sparta, Tennessee employs a ton of, a large portion of that area up there. Um, and they make a great boat. Uh, Picasso Lures, I've been with Picasso Lures and Dan Vesuvio for a long time, and they're cutting edge, make some great lures, and he's really really good to me. Shimano and G Loomis, I can't. Uh, I'm just blessed to be able to use using their equipment, and this top notch. So yeah, that's I love love this and meeting folks and being friends with lots of unique individuals like you, Jordan. That's I'm just I love it. So
Is we
that's
see in
my
hashtags every now and then on Facebook. There's hashtag thank God for plastic boats, right?
that's it. Yeah, thank God for little plastic boats. That's that's I'm 54 years old. When I go out on that little boat, in which a blue sky is not a little boat anymore. It's a pretty good barge floating around out there.
Yeah,
But it's like I'm like a little kid again. And anything to make an old man feel that way, there ain't nothing wrong with that.
100%.
Yeah,
Everybody needs more of that.
yeah. world be a better place. Everybody did it. If everybody did it and enjoyed it as much as I do or you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I appreciate you coming on here. You were one of the first people that came to mind when I named the show Road Dog, and when I was trying to get together. You were one of the first people I had pop into mind when I wanted to have somebody on here. So thank you so much for coming on here and talking
I'm
to me
honored.
for a little bit. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Thank you, Jim.
I thank you.
Uh, all righty. Thank you, Jim, coming on here. Obviously, had a lot of fun. Me and Jim always end up somewhere, eating dinner at somewhere that's kind of off the beaten path. Um, don't know what the next guest, who the next guest will be, but we'll get somebody cool. We got a couple people we've been talking to about it, and I- I'm excited to kind of try that out. Um, we'll play us out of here in a second. I do have uh, an intro and outro coming. We're gonna have a nice, cool sounding that kind of fits the podcast a little bit more. Buddy of mine, Abby Abendanza. Some of y'all know who that is. Pennsylvania dude that is got an awesome country music career. He's had bands and all that nature. He's getting me a song together that y'all will recognize, but it's got some awesome stuff about the podcast in it, and for me specifically. So I'm really excited to kind of get that done and have that put on here. But for now, thank you guys. We'll get an awesome Road Dogging podcast going in the future, get some more guests, and try to improve every time we have one of these. So thank you guys so much for listening.